It's Brian Preston, the Money Guy.
Another really sad and tragic truth about money as well and wealth is it can very well be the thing that ruins your next generation.
Well, I think, let me do the glass half full first, because I'm an optimist, naturally an optimist, and I love sharing the stats that 80% of millionaires are first generation, meaning that they've don't come from a lot of resources, they've saved, they've used a lot of the things we cover on the Money Guy, and they become successful. Well, if you really think about that, now we're analytical, we're technicians. If you take that apart, the only way that stat can be true is if wealth is fleeting in the short term, because it does disappear. And think about this. This is known stats that we see over and over again, is that wealthy families, typically 70% of the wealth disappears by the second generation. 90% of the wealth disappears and evaporates by the third generation. That is so sad.
It's so sad to think about all the hard work you do in building this wealth, deferring gratification, making good decisions to provide for your kids and hopefully one day even their kids. And ultimately, by the time it gets to your grandchildren, all of that wealth has disappeared. I don't think that is the legacy that most wealthy folks want to leave. What they would want to do is say, man, I was able to be part of that 80% of first generations. How can I pass these types of decision-making processes? How can I pass these traits onto my next generation so that they don't become part of this statistic?
Yeah, so let's talk about this. Let's go through some of these Money Guy tips, because look, as parents, we both have daughters. You worry. I take the responsibility. How do we try to get our children? Because I think a lot of the wrongs of the world that we talk about is a lot of time it is social economics.
Absolutely.
Wealth creates easiness and opportunity, but it also can ruin in some ways, because that hunger, that desire to strive for more might be that fire or that ember that's ablaze at a younger age might be actually put out if you overindulge too much. So let's actually go through some of these tips. Number one is know the components of happiness and fulfillment. And I actually want to go through these.
Yeah, so we call this, quit swimming upstream, right?
Yeah.
So know what actually makes you happy. I want to give you a huge compliment, Brian, because you did one thing that I thought was beautiful. We live in a unique community here in the Nashville suburbs where there's a lot of wealth in this area. And there are a lot of neighbors that we have, a lot of friends that we have, that when their children turn 16 and start driving, they get a brand new car. They get like the nice luxury brand. You can go through a number of the school parking lots in this area, and you'll be amazed at how many fancy, nice cars that you saw. You made a very different decision when it came time for your oldest daughter to begin driving, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those things, and it was tough because we could afford to buy a nicer car for my oldest, but I was worried about, I really thought long and hard about this, because there's a part of you as a parent, you're like, okay, I need to buy the newest car because it's going to have the best safety features. But you're like, man, but that's really going to take away the opportunity to learn that self-discipline or the ability to enjoy the power of wanting something, saving for something, and building something. So I actually went the path of, I had my oldest daughter, she had to pay for half of her car.
I love it.
And so because she had to pay half, she's got a 14-year-old car. I mean, and I like that. We've actually had a lot of conversations on this, because my wife was showing me on social media the other night, somebody in her college life just bought their 16-year-old child a European luxury car, brand new. And I was like,
for a 16-year-old.
I mean, compare and contrast that to our daughter, who's now who has a 14-year-old car. But I just think about it. I fast forward and I see when my daughter graduates college, goes off to and gets her first real job. When she upgrades her car, whether it's used or whether it's just a reasonably priced brand new car, there's going to be so much feeling of accomplishment with that. And then I think that if you can gin up that engine of, man, this felt good. It's back to that hedonic treadmill. This felt good that I could take this okay car, this safe car, but now we can go to a little nicer car. It brings happiness. I think about this with my first house, then my second house, and now I'm on to my third house, as I've upgraded each time. There's things I improved each time. There's features I picked up, and it's fun. It's part of the journey, and that's what can bring fulfillment, because there's something about if all of a sudden you start at the top. I mean, think about Drake. Started at the bottom and now we're here. There's a reason he has that in the song lyrics. If you start at the top,
it's hard to go up.
Man, it is. I mean, you can fall off that ladder so much easier. So, I mean, and look, we can do this exercise. I started off with a 1984 Chevy Cavalier.
Yep.
My friends affectionately called it the Ragalier all through college. Moved to my first car was a used Mazda 626. Loved that car with the oscillating fans in the middle. I thought it was the coolest car in the world, even though it was a very reasonably priced $10,000 car that I graduated and bought used. The next one, I think when my wife and I bought a Ford Explorer used, we thought that was the bomb diggity. And then I got a used Acura. And then I bought my first car, was that Lexus ES350. It was the first new car I'd ever had. And that was, and look, we drove that car for over a decade. Yep. You need to be part of the journey. You need to be careful. And I consider that also part of underindulging.
Well, what I love about that so much, Brian, is one of the things you just hit on is focusing on experiences rather than things. Because I think about the experience that you gave your daughter in being able to save up for her first car, being able to have some ownership in that, being able to be a part of that process. That is so much more valuable than you just buying a car for her. And this can go for anything, whether it be trips or birthdays or Christmases or whatever. If you can focus on the experience of the moment over the bright, shiny thing, you'll be amazed at how much more valuable and how much longer lasting that'll go with your kids.
Well, I mean, I'm now at the age where eating a good meal by a chef that is like an artisan.
Sure.
It's glorious. I mean, especially if you're going with neighbors and you get to enjoy the nice meal and you know it's expensive, but you appreciate it. If you did this every night,
you'd lose so much luster.
It would lose it. And I think that sometimes as human nature is we think if it's good, more of it must be better. But if anybody who grew up going to buffet and eating buffet food,
more is not
always better. I mean, so that's why underindulging is actually good. Hey, here's the other thing I think is important. As a kid, you hear to give is the better than to receive. Yep. I remember as a kid, when I was into Star Wars, I'd be like, that's crazy. Who thinks that giving is better than receiving? They obviously have never received a Greedo or the new Darth Vader or this or that. It's just, but as you get older, you realize, man, there is so much value and wisdom in that statement because because when I was coming out of college and broke and you went out to eat, and maybe there was a parent that came out with, like you went to a Georgia football game and somebody had their father was with them and they bought dinner for everybody. I remember thinking, oh man,
that's amazing.
They don't realize that $60 I just saved on this nice meal is going to help me pay for gas, going to help me buy for groceries. And, it's probably not that big of a deal for them, but it meant a lot. And I made sure I said, thank you. You're always great at saying thank you. So now that I can pay it forward to someone, I see the enjoyment you can have by paying it forward and spending on someone else. And then, Bo, here's the last thing on this, because you're so good at this. Happiness is not about the consumption. We have found out there's lots of research that it actually ties more into relationships. What do we mean by that?
Yeah, so when you actually do a study of happiness and fulfillment and what brings people happiness, it's actually concentrated in some specific areas of your life. One is your faith. This thinking of ideas and things that are not of this world, something of bigger than yourself. This idea of family, solid relationships of people that are going to be there for your entire life. Community, meaning making the environment around you better, pouring into the lives of those around you. And then your work, the place where you spend the majority of your time on the majority of your days. If you're gonna be there, you might as well make sure it's somewhere you wanna be and you're doing something you wanna do. If you can find how to be well-rounded in those four areas, faith, family, community, and work, you'll be amazed at how much more healthy of a view you have on wealth and money and how much more healthy of a view you're going to pass on to your kids as it relates to wealth and money.